I will call this meeting to order on Thursday, March 17th, 6:02 p.m.
I'm just going to walk away.
I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Okanagan Silks people. I'll start by a roll call. First, probably introduce myself, although we will get into introductions. My name is Corey Griffiths. I am the Director of Corporate Services and the Deputy CAO, Chief Administrative Officer for the Regional District of Central Okanagan. I'll be chairing the meeting until such time as this body elects a chair and vice chair, and then go back there to reference, as Alan needs. So we'll do a quick roll call. I have online Karen Lynch with the Provincial Ministry of Municipal Affairs, David Van Omen with the Municipal Affairs, Committee Member Dwayne Johansson, Committee Member Tim Jones. Have I missed anyone online? Thank you. And in the room, we have Donna Green, Kaylee Simpson, Daryl Hordo, Josh Galloway, Rick Sanderson, Wayne Carson, Scott Graham, Carrie Cook, Colin Kopp, and Brian Arquila. Did I say that correctly, Brian? Arquila. Okay. So I can confirm that we do have quorum and the meeting can continue. So item 2 is welcome introductions. So I've already introduced myself. Maybe I'll start with you, Brian. The latecomer always gets that task. Just a quick introduction, and later in the presentation, the consultant Alan Nielsen will go into roles between the municipal affairs staff.
My name is Brian Arquila. I have a company called Mass Pacific Environmental. We do land use planning throughout Canada, London, Silver Lake, Yellowknife, Vernon. We also do a fair bit of work with Indigenous communities regarding land use planning. And this is our community. It's very interested in this process.
Great. Thank you.
I've lived here for 15 years, a long time listening, seeing the comings and the goings of the community. And my husband used to water run the water system here for 25 years. We also built the roads from Westside Road up to the top.
I'm Killiney Beach, and I've been on the Northwest Communities Association for 2 years. I joined with this specific goal in mind.
Daryl Farrell at the community property owner for 20 years now.
Josh Galloway, been a full-time resident for 25 years now.
Rick Sanderson, I lived here for 45 years. He's one of the original 7 that started the fire department.
And just a reminder for those in the room, we are doing our best with all of the technology, but please speak up if you can.
I'm Elaine Carson. I'm your elected director. I have been in the community for a while. My parents bought a lot here in 1958. Came up here in Summers. I bought the house in 1980. Spent 21 years with the fire department, mainly the fire chief. And 7 years as the regional director in my second term now. And I guess I sort of stirred the pot on this one. This is what I heard in both elections when I knocked on doors and spoke with people within the areas. It was about our local governance and our inability to address service issues both with the regional district and with the province, because a lot of our services are delivered provincially out of the North Okanagan Regional District, and it makes it very difficult because those service agencies answer to a different regional board than us. So that the issues of governance and services is what I'm hoping that we can address here and get the answers that everybody's been asking me for more than 7 years. We'll go with that for now.
I'm Scott Graham, and I live in the community. Recently retired. I've been out here for about a year now, and have been in the community actually for about 15 years. I'm a former CFO, and I've worked with Aboriginal development in the past. I have been on public and private boards for a number of years, and this is my introduction to the community.
I'm Terry Cook. I think they're probably the newbie to the neighborhood. We moved here in June. My husband and I are here full time. We're both retired RCMP members, and since we retired, we now do private consulting work on a variety of different things. And just excited to be here and see the things that are going.
Hi, I'm Tom Cobb, and owned property my wife and I have lived for about 15 years. Or that we came up here, so like, and we migrated our way here. So I built 3 homes up here over most recently. One that we're just in the process of rebuilding now, given the flash. So I've got a lot of experience and spent a lot of time with retail district and working with the properties as well. Very keen and interested in us community and abreast, shall I say.
Great. Maybe we'll go to the committee members online and then hand it over to municipal representatives, and then last but certainly not least, our consultants. So unfortunately, we are working with some tech issues in the room. We can see you on one screen for those of you online. So you just have to speak up, and we'll have to put the voice with the face at a future time. And maybe, Dwayne, we can start with you.
Hi, I'm Dwayne Johansson. My family has been involved in the West Side since the late 60s. I've been a permanent resident of the West Side since 89, 90. And I'd like to say hello to all my friends and neighbors out there, and hopefully we have a productive meeting and committee here. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Tim, over to you.
Hi, Tim Jones. I've had a cottage at La Casa for the last 11 years. I do live full-time in Port Moody and more of a summer residence for me. I've been on the Strata Council at La Casa for 9 of the last 11 years, either as vice president or president. Retired a couple years ago in 2020. Good timing, bad timing. With that, and just looking forward to being able to share the unique perspective of more of a seasonal residence rather than permanent residence.
Great. And while we work on our tech issues, maybe I'd ask my colleagues from the province to sit tight, and you can include your introductions when Alan starts to talk about the roles. Hope that that's okay with you while we work on the screen issue. Over to you, Alan.
Great, thank you very much, Corey. My name is Alan Nielsen, and I am part of the consulting team for this study, so part of the committee's consulting team. And very happy to be here today. I live in Kelowna. I work based out of Kelowna, but I know the West Side very well. And I'm looking forward to learning more about and getting to know much better the Northwest Side. So very happy to be here, very happy to be involved with the study. I've worked with Director Carson on a number of different projects through his time in the regional district, and I've worked with Corey and her staff many times as well, so it's a delight to be here. Looking forward to working with the committee.
My name is Sherry Hurst. I work for a company called Left Side Partners. I'm based out of Victoria, but Alan and I have been working together for maybe more years than I'd like to say, probably about 20 years, and on various local government projects. And we particularly love doing governance studies and service studies. So I'm very much looking forward to learning about your community and helping and be on the consulting team for the community.
Good evening, my name is Brianna Wells. I am new to this kind of process. I asked Alan if I could join and learn a little bit more about the research side of this. My own background is I'm a research development officer at UBC in my day job. So I'm here to learn from you and learn from Alan about how this this process works. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for letting me come tonight.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Corey, just one thing, we have one other committee member, Eric, and Eric is on the APC as well.
Yes,
They have a
I
meeting
spoke with him
tonight,
yesterday.
so I'm hoping that he'll be joining us very shortly.
Great. Perfect. So the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda, and then we'll move into the election of the chair and the vice chair. So we do need a mover to adopt the agenda as presented. And so that would be a committee member, a voting committee member.
I so move.
Okay, I have Kaylee first and Dwayne second. Any discussion about the agenda? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I saw all hands up, so none are opposed. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, and now moving to item 4 on the agenda, the election of the chair and the vice chair. So while, local government does tend to be very formal, we tackle this a little bit less formally. We are in your community, but you're in your own communities. And so I would throw it out there to just a show of hands of people who are voting members on the committee who would like to put their name forward for chair consideration.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to do.
Calling a second time. So far, we have one person who's put their name forward, Josh Galloway. You put your name forward as well. Okay. And Dwayne. So we have 3 people who have putting their names forward to be president.
If you've got another person there, I'll rescind. I'll take mine out.
Okay, sorry, chair.
Chair.
Different organization, chair. But we will be asking for a vice chair as well.
Yeah, it's fine.
You guys want to talk about that?
I'm good as a vice chair.
I was gonna.
I knew it.
I'll support that.
People speak back.
No, you sat on a bunch of these before, right? CEO, CFO. I think so. Scott, it's all yours.
I'm going to take that formally as Scott accepting the nomination to be chair. Josh, can I assume you're willing to put your name in as vice chair then?
I will.
Okay. Any other interested parties to serve as vice chair? Hearing and seeing none. Welcome Scott, chair of the committee, and Josh, vice chair. I will now remove myself from the table and put a chair placard in front of you there, Scott. Over to Alan is the next item on the agenda discussion.
Thank you very much, Corey, for that expert handling of the first part of the agenda. And thank you, Mr. Chair. From now on, you shall be Mr. Chair. We are, as I mentioned, we're very happy to be here this evening to have this inaugural meeting of the study committee. And we've got our agenda in front of us. And if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, we'll simply kind of take the lead on some of these points and move forward. Okay, wonderful. The purpose really this evening is to, there are several purposes, I suppose, this evening. It's really to, I'm just going to just call my, beg your pardon here. Okay, whoops. No, that's not it. Okay, anyway, we're really here tonight to learn a little bit about local governance, about the system we have in place today, but we're also here to talk about the role of the committee going forward in the study, what's expected of the committee, the different folks on the committee. We'll hear from the province about the role of the province, and we'll talk a little bit about the role of the community and RDCO as well. We're going to go through and talk about the purpose of the governance study. So exactly what it is we're trying to do in the study. And we'll talk about the process that we've laid out in the consultant's proposal, the proposal that Sherry and I put together, which is part of your package. And we'll just go through kind of at a higher level and touch on the key points going forward so the committee has a sense as to the major steps that we'll be following over the next, the next 4 or 5 months. We will then talk a little bit about local government in British Columbia. This is where we'll focus on the role of, or the system of local government and the system of local governance that we have in place today here in Northwest Side. And that's important because we want to really understand what our system is structured to be and what the system is that we have in place right now, because that's going to give us a bit of a foundation then upon which to build as we get into some more detail in our subsequent meetings and in the work that we'll do on behalf of the committee. So we'll talk about local government in British Columbia, and specifically the regional district governance and service provision. Sherry is going to then talk about services and the types of services that we're going to be studying in Northwest Side, and kind of what we look for when we look at services and the kinds of materials we'll bring back to the committee. We will importantly review the community education program that we'll be working with the committee on, both on an ongoing basis and then on a more concentrated basis as we are in our 2-month kind of engagement period that we'll have a little bit later. We'll get into some of the details as we go forward. And then finally kind of look ahead to the next meeting and what we can expect and what the committee can expect to receive from the consultants in advance of that meeting. So let me proceed if I could. I'm going to share screen. Let's hope this works. Okay, so we've got Dwayne, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Oh my goodness, I've already made a mistake. There we go. Okay, woo. Great start. Got that out of the way. Let's talk a little bit about the study committee, because you are an important body. You have been elected, you've been appointed to this body, you put your names forward, I should say, and you have a very important role to play in this process going forward. So let's talk a little bit about the role of the committee, and we'll start with the terms of reference. You all have a copy of the terms of reference in the document, and I'll just kind of highlight a few key points in the terms as we go through. First of all, we've got oops, let's try this again. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, terms of reference. So when we look at our terms of reference, a couple of points to highlight from the terms. First of all, you are a citizens committee. So as you know, you are all residents here of Northwest Side, and you do represent, as a collective, you represent the community. So you represent the different demographic groups, the different communities that make up the community, and a tremendous amount, and the different views really. And so a lot of effort has gone into reviewing the submissions that you made and making sure that the names that made the cut, as it were, that are here around the table, really kind of add a lot of value to this body. So going forward is going to be, we know going forward that we have a representative body that can clearly represent and the views of Westside and the different elements of the community, the different features of the community, and really contribute in a big way to the study. So Citizens Committee is the first bit. Neutral and balanced. So one of the things about the committee that's so important is ensuring that as we go forward, you keep a neutral perspective. And that's going to be important because we're going to be looking at services that have different, and all these services will bring up different issues. You'll know from having received the services in the past and being involved in some aspect in the services in some cases, you'll have different views and different opinions on the services, but really as a committee, our role is to oversee the study and to ensure that the consultants, that is us who work for you, that the consultants are thorough in their research, are thorough in their analysis and their explanation, and are also neutral. So you help to ensure that impartiality, that neutrality in how the information is presented. That's going to be very important as we go on through this process, because as we start to kind of move through and look at and move from doing the assessment of what's in place now to thinking about and working with the community on what some of the issues are perhaps with those services and the decision-making systems, and then ultimately moving into thinking about options on potential changes to make, both within the structure and perhaps to the structure of local government here. It's going to be very important for the community to know, and for the province to know, and for all observers to know that the committee approached this study in a very neutral fashion, a very impartial fashion, and was true to its mandate to ensure simply that the study was thorough, that it looked at all of the items that needed to be looked at, and it was communicated in a way that people could understand and make informed decisions about. So that's important for the committee. Another point about the committee then is to engage with the community. So we talked about that, and we're going to go through that in some detail this evening, but one of the key roles for the committee is to be that link to the community. You'll be receiving a lot of information from the consultants, and one of your roles will be to ensure that you understand the information, that you scrutinize that information, and then that with the assistance of the consultants, you can then communicate that information clearly to the community so that the community then can get a very solid understanding of how things work today, of kind of what some of the concerns may be, and about what some of the options are for potential change should there be options required for those changes. And then finally, the role for the committee is going to be to look at or to make a recommendation as to how to proceed. And so that recommendation will again emphasize, I think, or the fact that you need to make that recommendation will really emphasize the importance of that impartiality, that neutrality as we go through, and will enable, and that recommendation will speak to next steps beyond this study. So are there options that require a deeper dive? Are there changes that we can make within the current system that the committee feels should be recommendations to the RDCO board and so forth? So those kinds of important things we capture in terms of reference and really speak to the role of the committee. And what I thought, Mr. Chair, we could do is if we can go through a few kind of sections of this agenda, and then we can stop and receive any questions, if that's okay with folks. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Roles and responsibilities. So let's talk a little bit. We'll talk about the roles and responsibilities of the committee. And when we look at those, well, I'm going to come back to the roles and responsibilities in just a moment here. Here we are. So let's talk about, we've covered the Governance and Services Committee, the Electoral Area Director. So everybody here knows Director Carson. He is, as he mentioned, he's been in the community for some time. He's worked in the community, he lives in the community, and he is most importantly your elected official on the Regional District Board, on your local government governance body. So that in and of itself, the fact that he is your elected official makes it very important that he be present in these discussions and that he contribute these discussions. This is first and foremost, however, a citizens committee, as we noted. So Director Carson is here to provide perspective, to help fill in some gaps if we need some assistance in that capacity, to certainly provide color commentary from time to time, which we know he's good at, and I say that with all admiration, and but also to allow the committee to do its job. And so for that reason, he is ex officio, he's non-voting in that capacity, because we want the citizens really to kind of lead this process. But despite being ex officio, despite being non-voting, that perspective and his presence here is very important. Another reason is because it does provide an important link back to the board of directors. So that gives us that official link back to the governing body, because we are a committee of the Regional District Board, our local government. The regional district. So the regional district is your local government right now, and that's great. In the context of this study, however, the regional district is here first and foremost to provide support to the process and the committee. So the regional district is contracted by the province to oversee this study from an administrative perspective, to ensure that the consultants on your behalf receive all the information that they need, that we need to provide the analysis, and to ensure that the committee receives the support it needs. So we have Sandy taking minutes for the evening. We have everybody we have the staff who have come here before we all arrive to help set up this room and so forth. So that's going to be very important. The regional district will also then be the body, the board will be the body that receives the recommendation from this committee at the end of the study. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs, I'm going to ask our colleague Karen Lynch, who's the Director of Local Government Restructure. They're the branch of the ministry that oversees all governance and services and all types of restructure studies. And I'll ask Karen if she can give us a little bit about the role of the ministry in these types of studies.
Thanks, Alan. First, I want to acknowledge with gratitude that I'm joining the meeting from the traditional territories of the Kwangwan speaking peoples. I want to thank the committee for having the ministry reps tonight. It's our privilege, and it's always exciting to see a governance study come to fruition. The ministry is pleased to support the study in terms of two ways. First, we provide the study grant to hire the consultant and to do the work. Second of all, we provide staff resources to support the committee's work through any time that there's questions that need to be answered. Often what we do is that we look at drafts of reports, and from time to time we will participate in study committee meetings as needed. The program is very, how shall I say, we're very oversubscribed at the present moment. So staff resources are stretched pretty thin, but we are pleased to support the study and look forward to seeing what comes from the study. I think with that, what I do want to do is extend congratulations to everybody around the table who's on the committee, and to Director Carson for really making a commitment to their community to explore the type of governance that you have and how that governance functions, and to better understand your community needs. So please accept congratulations from us. From that, just a couple of words of advice. I've been through, I think, 9 governance studies so far in my career with Structure Branch, and the successful committees are those committees that stay within terms of reference and stay within the procedural bylaw or procedural guidelines that's provided from the local government, because that way everybody plays from the same book, and that you're able to deliver a product that is supportive for the community, and it is reflected back in terms of the quality of product that you get out of the study. So it's an exciting time, I feel, for you in starting out. So I wish you all the best in your endeavors. And like I say, the staff are here as a resource, and I'm going to take up a little bit more of your time because I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, David Van Omen, who is actually involved with the governance study right now. So he has firsthand experience dealing with governance studies elsewhere in the province at the current time. So I'll just turn the mic over, the proverbial mic over to David to give a few words of wisdom.
Hi, good evening. So my name is David Van Omen, and I'd like to say hello to the community members as well as to Director Carson. As Karen shared, this is an exciting start to a new study. It's pretty cool. I'd also like to say hi again to Alan and Sherry. Hi. So as Karen mentioned, what I'm doing right now is I'm also working with the RDOS in the Area D Governance and Services, Services and Boundary Configuration Study. And I also am jumping in to help with the Sorrento Blind Bay Incorporation Study, the last stages of it. Again, because we're nicely crunched. So I would like to say that, so typically for a governance study, the committee functions basically as a standalone body working with the consultants. And as Karen mentioned, really guided by the terms of reference. So if I could give 2 quick tips, one of them Karen has already kind of mentioned, so echoing on that. So have the whole committee look at the terms of reference so that everyone's quite confident in what's in scope and what's without scope, and everyone can stay within those lanes. And what I've come to learn from my own experience, but also from others, I would also highly recommend, it's on the agenda for tonight, I would really focus on the communications protocols for both how committee members will speak to each other and how committee members will speak to the public. And I think that's really important to nail that at the start and have everyone be clear on that. And that will, I think, help to ensure a smooth process through your entire study. So again, I will be the one, if you need some ministry assistance, I'll be the one to help you with that. And I'm more than happy to. These are usually quite interesting and there's always something new to learn, which is great. Thank you for allowing me this time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much to Karen and to David. We are, and I know I speak for Sherry as well in saying that the committee and the process are in very good hands, in safe hands with both Karen and David at the helm in Victoria, because as David kind of noted, he is involved in a couple of other studies that both Sherry and I as a team have been involved in and are involved in right now. And we know from firsthand experience that he is extremely good at what he does and will be a good source of guidance and a good source of information whenever we need anything from the province. And Karen, Sherry and I first met Karen, goodness, must have been 15 years ago or so on a study. And so she's got a lot of experience and that will be coming very useful to the committee. Okay, Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I'll just proceed then and talk a little bit more about roles and responsibilities and round this out. And so the consultants, so we've got your three consultants in front of you here. Nielsen Strategies is my company and Brianna's part of my company for this study. And we've got Westside Partners and that's Sherry's company, but we work as a collective and as a team on these types of studies. Our role is really to serve the committee. So we are your servants in that sense. We are here to work for the committee, to do the legwork for the study that is being undertaken under your guidance. We are here to advise the committee and to make sure the committee gets what it needs in order to be able to go to the community and provide information that the community can digest in a very user-friendly fashion. We are paid for by the province for this, and Karen noted that point earlier, but we do work for the committee, and so we do report to the committee on that. We do liaise with the regional district for administrative purposes and to get the information we need to do the analysis. But again, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, we are here for the committee. Got that? We're part of you. We serve you. So that is the consultants. And then finally, and last but certainly not least, and I'll just try to get this, there we go, is the community. So the community is why we're all here, to serve the community and to provide this information to the community so that the community can determine if our current type of governance, if our current type of service provision is the type that best meets the needs, and if it's not, how to change that so that we can ensure that local needs are met in an efficient and proactive way. So the community is very important. Not only is it the group that we are here to serve, but it also is the group that we are here to communicate with and to engage and to ultimately take tremendous amount of input from and use that input by the committee then to make recommendations going forward. Mr. Chair, I will stop there and just see if there is anything with respect to roles and responsibilities, any questions that we can address.
No, I'm okay unless somebody else has got something to ask.
Okay.
I do one thing. We have some housekeeping issues. I don't just take care of those afterwards.
Sure. You're thinking
just the code of conduct sign offs.
Got you. Correct. So. Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Sure, we can, if you like, we can go through those now if you like, or we can speak to those
at the end, whatever.
Sure. Corey, maybe I can ask the code of conduct and the procedure bylaw, how did we want to address those?
Closer to those online here.
Sure.
So the code of conduct and procedure bylaws must be followed at each of the meetings. So they've been provided in the application process. They're provided in tonight's agenda package to you. And so that's how the meetings have to conduct their orders of business.
Right, we don't just sign.
No.
Just sign off, right?
No, that's part of my job, is just to ensure that those pieces are adhered to.
Okay.
Yes.
The other question I was going to ask you was the 2017 communication study. Are you going to review that?
Not in any great detail. We're going to build from some of that, and we know that that study kind of obviously preceded this one and kind of set the stage for some of what it is we're doing today. But we are treating that as a separate event, and we're kind of going to focus going forward at this point. We can certainly talk about that though, if you wish.
Okay. Well, I mean, at some point in time, I think we
Sure.
we should actually review it just to see what's happened over the last 5 years.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, shall we proceed then? I'll just share the screen again. Okay. Let's talk, David mentioned earlier about kind of communication. So when we think about administration communication for the committee, a couple of points here. So the regional district administers, as I noted, and so that's going to, for the process for the committee, the regional district is going to be there to provide whatever assistance the committee and the process needs in that respect. We've got the, when we're dealing with communication, what would be very helpful is from a consultant's perspective, we are happy to receive communication from committee members because you'll have questions as we go forward and so forth, and from the committee members, including Director Carson. What we would ask though is in order to ensure that everybody on the committee receives the same information at all times, if you could make sure, if you do send information or questions to us, please make sure to copy the chair and the vice chair. And then the chair and the vice chair can then ensure that everybody kind of receives all the same information. That's going to be important, so we're all on the same page. And there'll be safeguards. So if something is missed or something, we'll certainly ensure that everybody has that information and gets the same answers and the same sees the questions that were asked. The communication with the ministry, that is going to be, there'll be communication between the consultants in the ministry for sure, and anything from the committee comes from the committee chair. So one of the key roles of the committee chair is to be the spokesperson for the committee. So not only to the community, but also then in any communication with the ministry. So David may reach out to Scott, to the chair with questions, or to set up different parts of the process, as it were, and we'll be involved as consultants in that as well. But it's not. We do want to streamline and have one point of contact from the committee to the ministry, and that would be through the chair. And then the communication to the community as well. We will, as a full committee, have kind of engagement with the community when we are in the middle of our engagement process and our program, our 2-month program, which we'll talk about in a little bit tonight. But we do want to have, if we do need to communicate in another way with the community, we do again want to make that through the chair so that we have a unified message coming from the committee. Obviously, individual committee members will be communicating in an informal basis with their neighbors and their families and so forth, and that's to be encouraged, because this committee is part of the feedback, part of the receipt of information from the community, so that's going to be important. But in terms of providing a viewpoint or perspective from the committee or information from the committee to the community, we'll go through the chair for that. Yes, Director.
Can we get a contact list for everybody's names, phone numbers, emails, so that we can?
You bet.
We follow through with that.
Yes, by all means, we'll put together a list on that, and I'll share it with the province as well, so they have that full list too. Thank you for that. Okay, are we okay to move forward and talk a little bit about the study? And thank you for your indulgence on some of this. This inaugural meeting is not always the most interesting, because we're kind of we got to kind of make sure we cover off a bunch of different building blocks before we can move on to the actual exciting stuff. But yes.
You mentioned that there were parts of the 2017 study that as consultants should be built on.
Yes.
Parts of the discussed with the 2017 study. working on something as far as.
Sure. So, yeah, okay, good question. So the question was how are we going to use the 2017 study as kind of a starting point? From our perspective, we are starting a new study now, and we want to go and look at more detail at the services that the 2017 study touched upon. The 2017 study did have a good survey mechanism, brought that back, so give us a sense of what some of the issues were at that time. And we know that the regional district has responded to that study with some changes since that time. That material, the thoughts that committee members have, that the community has with respect to the issues that were identified at that time, do they persist now with respect to some of the changes that were made in response to those issues, and have they addressed the issues satisfactorily? That stuff is going to come out both through our largely through the community engagement process, but we will also refer to that is in the interim report that we're going to be bringing forward to the committee for the next meeting. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's jump into the study if we could, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So what is the purpose of this study? Well, in simple terms, the purpose is threefold. First of all, we want to look at what is in place today. Now, everybody around the committee table is engaged in the community, has in many cases kind of a direct professional attachment to different elements of local government and local services and so forth, and that's great. So the group around the table today is going to be pretty well informed, I'm guessing, about some of the things that are in place today, both in terms of services and governance. That said, we want to make sure we're all on the same page, as it were. So when we look at governance and services study, the first thing we want to do is get a very clear sense of what's in place today. We want to understand very clearly how decisions are made in our current system of governance, and we want to understand very clearly what the services are, who provides those services, who makes decisions for the services, what the scope of those services are, how the services are paid for. We want to answer all of those questions with respect to all of the different local services that are provided to Northwest Side. That is so the first part of the purpose of this study is to document in considerable detail what's in place today. Because until we have a very clear understanding of what's in place today, and a common understanding of what's in place today, it's difficult as a committee and as a community to think about what we may need to change and to address some needs. So we'll talk about what do we have in place today. The second part of the purpose is then to look at, ask the question, are the services and the governance structure meeting the needs of residents? So once we know what we've got, how are those things doing? How is the decision-making model, and how are the services doing in terms of meeting the needs of the community? And we'll answer that question through our community engagement. We want to hear directly from the community. And that's going to be very important. It's a very important role for the community. In some senses, you'll help to translate or to help impart that information in a way that everybody understands. And we'll have a big role in doing that. And you'll help to ensure that what we bring forward and propose to give to the community, both with you and on your behalf, is going to be understood by everybody, so that everybody will have a sense of not only what's in place today, but then the ability to determine whether those things in place today are meeting their needs, meeting the needs of the community. So what's in place today? Are the services and governance structure meeting the needs of the residents? And then third, and very important part as well, how can the concerns that are expressed by residents, when we hear from residents, how are those concerns, how can those concerns best be addressed? And that's where we're going to want to start to look at possible changes. Some of those changes may be within our current structure. Some of those changes may look at some kind of change to the structure. We don't want to kind of preempt, or we don't want to prejudge what those changes could be, because we don't know that until we understand both what's in place and what the concerns may be. But once we have those pieces of information, we can then start to think about can we change both within and possibly to the structure to meet the needs better of the community. Absolutely.
So this terms of reference that's being shared on the screen here is different than the terms of reference that was distributed to us in our package.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if we'll ever have access to this one, because I think this one is actually much more detailed than the one we were provided.
So you're, if I may, Mr. Chair, you're provided with two. One is the entire study's terms of reference, and the second is the committee itself.
I don't think I'm sure this wasn't in my attachment, but I could have missed it.
Yeah,
So-
it was part of the application process as well, and there was a lot of attachments. So,
So it should be on that email. If I go back and look at it a little closer.
well, it should be on the email. However, I do have a hard, I think I have a hard copy on hand right now. If I'd like to refer
That's
to
not a big
it.
deal. I'll go back and look at the email.
Okay.
I just wanted, I thought maybe I.
That's the distinction. They are both called the terms of reference, but one is for the terms of reference for the entire study, the
Okay.
scope of work. And it sprinkles a little bit of information about the
Yeah,
committee's
that's good.
role. And then the committee terms of reference talks a little bit more about process.
So this one is called, on the attachment, it's called the terms of reference as well.
Correct, for the study.
Thank you.
Now, I'm just going to, we do have something in the chat there, so I wonder how, oh, yeah, I can't get up to that, no.
You have to stop sharing.
Sorry to interrupt. That was just me. I just said I could open the whole terms of reference from the attachments. Sorry, that's all I wanted
Okay.
to share.
Okay, yeah, no, thanks for, yes, no, oh, okay, thank you. Hold on a second here. Yeah. Okay, let me just, the chat up there, David was offering to share these terms of reference online on screen. But what I'm going to suggest actually is that we just, I've kind of, I'm trying to multitask here. I will kind of touch on some key parts from that, and then if we wish, we can go through some additional parts after that, if that's all right with the committee. But I think we'll capture just in our discussion and in some of the slides we'll share here, I think we'll capture the essence of the terms. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Now, David, can you just give me a thumbs up? Can you see the screen on, can you see the material on screen?
I can see the first page, but not the full-on document.
Okay. Yeah, stop sharing that then. There we go.
Yeah. And sorry, what I meant to say was I opened up the attachment from the agenda that was sent out through the email. So it is there. It is
Okay.
available.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you.
Oh, on the agenda.
Yeah, this one,
Yes.
In the agenda package.
everything's in there.
Okay, great. So can I share screen? Okay. The chat's there. Oh, here we are. I have it open too. Oh, great. Okay. Okay.
Well, this one's the one. This one we started. Send it.
Okay, let's try this. Can you, okay, does that, how can I do that? Yeah, no, that's okay. I'm gonna need to just,
While Alan's doing that, maybe I can provide some support to the committee. So the email that you received on Monday at 4:18 PM included a link to the agenda package, which all the attachments are in. So it was sent on Monday, March, what day was that? It's Monday, 4:18. So it would be the 14th, yeah. Yeah.
Got the email,
From me.
Didn't go to the.
It's not
It's
an
a link.
attachment, it's a
not an
link.
attachment, it's a link.
It's the link that says here.
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not sure how to fix this here.
So this is the email that was sent. Attachments to the entire, it says the agenda package down here.
And then there's a link in the agenda package where it's attached.
If you click here, it'll direct you to a place called eScribe, and the agenda and all corresponding.
Oh, I see. Hold on a second.
Yeah. You got first?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody over here? Yeah, I'll bring it over to here.
Nope. Yeah. Okay. And we got our IT guy.
Just when we open it again, we're not able to advance the slides. When we read it again, we weren't able to advance it. We just
for those of you in the room and online, given the location and the remote technology that we've had to put in place, we did test everything on Tuesday. But we do appreciate your patience.
Implying that we're out in the middle of the bush or something?
No, I it'd be much easier looking forward, but we recognize that this is better.
It's okay. It's Murphy's Law. If you checked it and it worked, then, you know, it's not going to work as soon as you need it to.
And I think every time Sandy, our staff support here, puts a grape in her mouth, because that's all she's had for supper, she has some technical needs. It's really cool. Yes.
Sure. Just gonna start up here.
Yeah,
Just went from bad to worse. I'm really sorry. I did. Now I can't get it back.
Yeah.
Did you save it to the file?
No, I just saved it to, it's just on his view list.
wonder if it's,
But that's the problem, is I had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Close it out to get it to that.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a glitch. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we're trying.
That's what I want. Okay. Where's the note?
Check.
That's what I was.
Yeah, I wonder if we can kind of down here maybe. PowerPoint, there we go.
There.
So I think we should probably just be able to go kind of open, slide, There's slides.
Yep, fine.
There we go. Okay, so we'll go down to. Okay, we'll try that.
So what we're going to do is like should.
Right, okay, so get down here. Okay, and then go to Zoom.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, let's try. There we go. That's okay.
Okay, good. Okay, can you see that online, David? Okay. And nobody touch anything. Okay, thanks, everybody. Sorry about that. Let's move along here. We talked about the threefold purpose of the study. What I thought, it's something, you know, it's when we think about this study, it can be helpful to view it in a broader context. And maybe the way to do this is as follows. First of all, to think of it, this study as being an important step on a path that considers some kind of change. And when we talk about change, we're talking about change potentially to the way decisions are made, so which is unique to the style of local government, the model of local government, and also the way that services are provided and who provides those. So the way that I kind of think about it is that communities evolve and needs change over time. That's the first thing, and that kind of goes without saying. And it's important for governance, so how we make decisions, and it's important for service models to evolve in response to those needs. And if we get to a point in a community where concerns arise with the governance model or with the services model, those concerns can prompt us to study, to understand the concerns, and to identify possible changes or options to address those concerns. This particular study, the governance and services study, is that vehicle for understanding the concerns and for identifying possible changes. So that's really kind of the focus of this study. Now, some changes that we identify through this study may be possible within the existing structure. There's lots of different things we can think of that could change within the existing unincorporated governance structure of RDCO that could potentially address some of the concerns that we may hear about when we reach out to the community. And some of those concerns and some of those changes, if it's within the structure, may be relatively easy to make. And so that would be not a bad outcome. Other changes, however, may involve some kind of structural change. And we won't, again, we won't kind of prejudge what those could be, but there just could be changes to the structure that we're in right now. The committee, based on the input from the residents and the advice from your consulting team, is going to identify and recommend those possible changes. And so that's going to be a key role for this committee. And that's kind of that third of the threefold purpose we talked about earlier. Once we understand what's in place today, once we hear from the community and understand the concerns and the interests, then we'll say, okay, given those concerns and interests, how do we best address those? What are some options that we can think about that we can then take forward as recommendations back to the regional district, back through the regional district of the province to think about changes, about implementing those changes. If the committee recommends structural change, that could involve some kind of second phase of the study. So, and again, I don't want to be very careful here. We don't want to kind of assume that's going to be the case, but that's where we would get to kind of where this study's done its purpose. And then if structural change is recommended, and if that change is accepted by the minister, then we would need to look at some additional phase of the study to look more carefully and in a lot more detail at that structural change. And as I noted, the minister is the one who gets to determine how to go forward at that point, whether there's an appetite for and a need for that additional phase to look at any kinds of changes that would involve a change to structure. And I've just kind of drawn this out here just in a very high quality artistic chart. So we are in the left hand, the purple box at the left is our service and governance issues raised. So we've had those issues come forward. That's why we're here today. We've raised those issues. Different folks from the community have come forward to Director Carson. Director Carson has come forward to the Regional District Board. The board has come to the province. Everybody said, yes, we believe there's legitimate concerns and issues raised with respect to service and governance. Let's put forward a request from the Regional District for study. The minister commissions that study. The study is undertaken under the guidance of this committee. Options for change are identified as part of that. And all of that happens as this Northwest Side Governance and Services study. That's our current phase. Now, if changes are within the structure, that's kind of where they end. That's where our process ends. And not only the governance and services study, but the whole broader process that we're looking at ends, because we can address those changes very quickly. If, however, the changes are to the structure, as I noted, and that's what the committee wants to recommend, well, then the ministry is going to consider advice. And it's going to, the minister may, depending on the advice of ministry staff and the ministers and a number of other considerations, the minister may then commission a new phase of study. And that new phase would begin. And that would be, again, that additional phase, that possible new study. So that gives you, that diagram is intended simply to kind of give you a sense of where we're fitting in that broader study. Let me just go to, can I go to Brian first? Okay, yes, Brian.
At the end of the day, is that you allow a decision to pass the minister based on the results of the study?
Does the minister make that decision, you mean? Yes, the minister makes that decision based, and that's the minister's prerogative. And the reason being is because in every province in every province in Canada, it is the provincial government that has constitutional responsibility for local government, for the local government system within its borders. And and I can speak just kind of from a British Columbia perspective, that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs takes that responsibility very seriously. That's why we see these studies that have a very deliberate and a very kind of, in some senses, kind of elongated process to go through, because the ministry recognizes that changes to the structure of government are not simple matters and that they can have implications that last generations. And so they want to be very careful on that. So yes, at the end of the day, the minister will take advice from the regional district, which takes advice from the committee. But at the end of the day, the minister is the one who gets to decide whether or not there's going to be a change.
At the end of the day, if the decisions, the results of this committee are robust enough, is there required a second phase? The examination of municipal corporation.
There would be, yes. And the reason being is because we're not going to, in this study, look, and actually, and both David and Karen mentioned earlier, one of the pieces of advice that they gave was to ensure that this committee stays within scope. And if we look at our terms of reference, it says very clearly that this is not an incorporation study. This is like, if, yes.
Examination law.
Exactly. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Following up exactly what you referred to. I've been fortunate to sit on the professional and community associations. And I do have one concern with the project scope as defined tonight. As mentioned, it's been mentioned a few times. Concern is imperative to examination process is the examination of fiscal responsibility. And can the committee effectively examine options without looking at fiscal accountability?
So when we look, so what this committee's role will be to say, okay, we have a sense from your consultants with the information we bring forward in terms of how money's being spent, where money's being spent, what it's costing to provide services. We don't do an audit of that, but we simply kind of say, here's what it costs to provide this service, here's how the money's recovered, or the cost is recovered, here's what the implications.
So there is a partial examination.
Absolutely, yeah. On the existing services, by all means, yes. On the next phase, let's just say at the risk of prejudging something here, let's just say that this committee said we want to look at a structural change. Then the ministry needs to say, okay, if we agree that that needs to be looked at, we need to commission another study, because then you need to start to look at what would the current service you're providing cost under a different system. Absolutely, yeah. So that requires a
concern just the way it's conducted in terms of that.
Thank you.
That there was no consideration.
Oh, no, we do.
This committee.
Yes, no, this committee looks very carefully at the costs among other factors. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just had Director Carson, and I'll come to you, Karen.
Yeah, I just a couple of things. I was just wondering, if this does go to this next phase, would this be a selection of a new committee, or would this
It would be.
It would be a new
Yes.
committee selected?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess the way I understand it right now is the committee's job is to explore options, not to exercise them.
Yes, exactly. So the committee's job really is to kind of identify options, frame them out a bit, and then say, okay, based on these, we think these options are worthy of deep dive,
Yes.
if you will, and that would be a recommendation that the committee could choose to make.
Yes.
And again, but I do want to kind of just emphasize, the committee could say, you know what, we think, given what we've heard from the community, given what we understand to be the fiscal situation, the service situation in Northwest Side now, we think we can address these concerns within our current structure. Here are our recommendations there. But yes, so to your point though, the committee on options going forward, the committee's role is to identify those, frame them out a little bit, and say, okay, let's pause there, send the recommendations forward, and then if the ministry chooses, based on input from the committee, based on input from our DCO, that it wishes to proceed further, then the ministry would say, let's have a new study. There'll be a new committee, because that committee will have a different role than this committee. Some folks may sit on that committee, and that's not uncommon. But glutton for punishment and all that kind of stuff. But yes, it would kind of be like, let's start the clock again, just in a different phase though. Yes, Jerry.
So my question is that if at the end of this process, we recommend or we put out some recommendations or some considerations for change within the structure to address whatever deficiencies that we find, or service delivery issues, communication issues, etc., and we send those to the RDCO, is there a process in place that holds the RDCO accountable to either attempt to make those changes or to report on any actions that they've taken on that to do those changes, or is it just a report that'll sit on the desk with no feedback coming our way or to the public?
Well, there's no kind of legal mechanism to hold accountable, but there would be, I mean, a regional district board receiving a recommendation of its committee and accepting that recommendation would feel incumbent upon themselves to make sure that there was some reporting back and transparency around those actions that were taken.
Okay, so further to that, is there any reporting or documentation on the considerations that were submitted in the 2017 review and what the RDCO did to action those changes and the results of those? Are those available somewhere?
We can bring forward some information on that. There was, some folks may know that prior to this study commencing and prior to this committee being formed, there was a select committee of the regional district board that was put together. Director Carson and some others were on there. It was chaired by Mayor Mills, or Director Milson from West Kelowna, and Vice Chair Milson in his capacity of the Regional District Board. And that one did, to your point, Carrie, it did look at, okay, what has been changed, what has been implemented from the 2017. We can certainly bring that information forward so there's so that this committee is fully aware of all of that, because that will help to kind of, it's a very good suggestion, that will then help to inform kind of the thinking going forward as well.
And those meetings are online.
Those meetings are online, okay.
Yes.
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 Good thinking. Okay, excellent. Corey, is there anything to add to that, or?
Just from a procedural perspective, so this committee will make and vote on motions, and depending on what those motions are, we're required to then bring those motions to the Regional District Board for consideration in an open, public, transparent process.
Okay, let's move on if we could. And please, these are excellent questions, and so please just jump in with others as we go. Just a couple of things from the terms of reference, which folks can have a look at, and we can always bring these back at our next meeting as well if we need to kind of refresh our memories. But a few key pieces from the terms of reference. It was identified to kind of build on the previous services and community issue study. So Carrie's point and Daryl's point earlier, very appropriate then to kind of raise this shine some light on that study. And so we can kind of speak to that a little bit more explicitly as we come forward with our interim report. To outline the system of electoral area governance. So that's something we'll get into a little bit this evening, and that will be reiterated then in our next meeting with our report, our interim report. To review all services, providers, costs, taxes. So to look in detail at all of those factors as they exist with the current services that you receive. Not only the RDCO services, but those included, but also the provincial services and any other services by bodies, Okanagan Regional Library, those kinds of things too. And then importantly, engage the community. So not only to provide that information, but also then to hear back, because understanding those needs and concerns is going to be very important going forward. Report out on the findings, the public engagement outcomes, the options, and the next steps. Another kind of key piece from the terms of reference. Let's talk a little bit about the consultants work program, which has been adopted by both the Regional District Board and by the province. And this is the work program that will kind of guide the committee in the process and identify the various steps. So it's important for us just to kind of go through this so you get a full sense of how we're going to proceed and where the key points are in that process. So the first thing to point out is there are kind of three, and this is all laid out in the proposed work program, but there are three kinds of chunks, if you will, three focus areas that we need to identify. One, and they speak very clearly to the three purposes of the study. So we will want to look in detail at the current state. And there's a number of points in the proposed work program that outline the kinds of things we'll be looking at. We will then want to understand very clearly through our engagement the concerns and interests of the community. And we will then want to identify options and frame those out for the committee to consider and ultimately to make recommendations on it. So that's kind of as a starting point. Let's look at the process here. So we are here at our first committee meeting. After this meeting, we will, and in fact, we've already started this process, this work already, and that is we will be doing our research on the current system in place right now, on the services and the costs and all those kinds of factors. We'll be doing the research on that, and we will be putting together the draft interim report. And that report will be pretty lengthy. It will, because there's a lot of detail to put in that report. And it's the kind of thing that we find, certainly Sherry, Brianna, and I find it extremely interesting, and hopefully you will too. And some people may find it a cure for insomnia, but the fact you're here tells us that you are as geeky as we are about this kind of stuff. So that's good. So we'll be presenting that. We will present that at the second committee meeting. So at the second committee meeting, we'll have that report to you at least a week in advance, so you'll have a good chance to really digest it. And we'll focus our second meeting on going through that, making sure that there's a clear understanding, making sure we've captured everything that needs to be captured, and really kind of allowing the committee to scrutinize the findings that we bring forward in that draft report. Once we have the feedback from the committee and we make any changes that need to be made in that draft report, we'll then want to get into the focused public process. There will be, and we're going to talk about this as we go a little further in the meeting, but in the community engagement, there will be ongoing information and touch points with the community. This is a touch point right now, this kind of committee meeting. And so our second committee meeting will be that as well. And we'll have our website, which is up there already, and that will start to kind of be fleshed out as we go forward from this point. But the public process will be also a focused 2-month program that we'll engage in and get that information from the interim report out to the public. We'll come back then after our public process, and we will all of us spend a considerable amount of time together in that public process, because one of the things it involves is 3 open houses at which your presence is requested / required. and we'll get into that in a little bit.
And will those open houses be held here?
They will be held, one will be held here. We'd like to hold 3 kind of in different places in the northwest side. Okay, well then we'll all have.
I want to go outside to the park. I'm a little early for that.
This is a beautiful hall. Yes, we'll have it here. Do we not have, so are there other places? So there's, I guess this is, yeah, okay, this is the one. Okay.
This is the most convenient.
Perfect.
Westside specifically.
There
There's
might be
others
something
throughout the
like acid, but I
electoral
do not know
Okay,
that.
okay. Well, when I was actually, 2 summers ago, actually just must have been, well, pre-pandemic, whenever it was, I was in Columbia Shoe Swap, and we had, we were having an open house, and as it happened, the gym that we all showed up, but the janitor got the date wrong and it was locked. So we just set up everything and had it in the parking lot. So that worked well. So maybe we'll do that. Anyway, but yes, there'll be 3 committee meetings, or 3 open houses. The 3rd committee meeting then will be bringing back together and really working with the committee to say, what did we hear from the community? What kind of needs, what kind of interest did you receive in terms of input? We'll bring together all that information prior to the meeting and suggest and present stuff to the committee, but you, having been part of that process, will also have your own thoughts. And so we'll need to kind of be very clear and develop consensus around kind of what the key takeaways were, and then how those takeaways are going to inform going forward to the next, the draft report, which will look at some options coming forward out of there as well. And then we will have a 4th meeting with the committee to outline those options, to flesh those out. And then after that, as a result of that 4th meeting, then going to the board with recommendations. Now, just when we think about timing on here we are. So we've got, we're here at the beginning of March. So March and April, the end of April, we'll have finished our research and our interim report. So we've got a couple of months to work on that. We've got then our second committee meeting in early May. Our public process is going to go May, June. And there's never a good timing for the public process. So I know people are saying, wait a minute, that's summer, we're getting into summer. And
That's
yeah,
not bad for us, though.
it's not too bad. Yeah,
No,
okay.
for this community, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
We lose a lot of snowbirds in the winter.
Yes, okay.
So we're better
So
off to do this stuff.
So the snowbirds are back from, yeah, okay, that's good. then.
And some of our seasonal residents
Yes.
are also here as well. So
Okay.
this is the best time for us.
Well, that's fortuitous then. Yes, that's why we planned it that way. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so so we'll finish that, and then July, August, we've got our 3rd committee meeting. We've got our draft report will come forward, and then the 4th meeting will have August, late August, early September, and then with recommendations going to the board. So it's a fairly brisk and condensed process, and there'll be a lot of work for the committee and for the consultants, and yeah.
Draft reports too.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Will we establish dates
For the 4 meetings that we have? Yeah.
for the public process?
Well, we can do that. Yeah, we'll start to do that. So we'll get that. And so maybe that's how we can throw it. We'll work with the RDCO. As I mentioned, one of the roles that RDCO is going to play is to help administer kind of a support capacity, the process. And so we can put forward some dates and then send out kind of by email to the committee some suggestions, and that will be a good opportunity for us to test our communications for what we're talking about.
One of the questions on the process.
Please.
Obviously, it's a face-to-face meeting, that's community environment, but
Yes, and if I can get you to hold that thought, Colin, because we've got a couple of slides on the process in particular. But the short answer is yes. Okay, any questions on the process as we've laid it out here? Easy peasy, okay, perfect. Okay, there we go. Oh, here we go. Oh, this one. Yeah, there we go. That is the extent of my technical prowess. We have changed the colors of the meetings. So we've got the 4 meetings there, just to give you a sense of how they kind of buttress the various kind of the reports in the process. Okay. We're going to pause for just a second while I run and get another bottle of water. And does anybody, if anybody would like a bio break or whatever they call it these days, whatever happened to smoke breaks? I mean, come on. Anyway, if we can maybe, Mr. Chair, just take 2 minutes, if that works. Okay, there we go. Maybe stand up and stretch. There we go. Thank you very much, Corey. Okay. Oh yeah, good shot. No, nice. But that's great.
It was good while it lasted.
Yes, exactly. Gotcha. Thanks.
One or the other, really.
Yeah, it's like you gotta get-
On, off, on, off.
you gotta get what's on the side.
I know.
Okay. Oh. Well, we have to-
I think that will, yeah, this is I can't see it, it's just, it's whatever's in that red. button. So
But I'm terrified of it.
that's what I said,
Yeah.
that you know, you don't want to start. I run a lot.
Will there
this meeting members, will they be given handouts for information for them to give to residents and neighbors?
Definitely during the public engagement process, yeah. So once we get it, so yeah, and when we come to that, so definitely handouts, and will also be a mail out to every household. Oh, that'd be good. That'd be a great idea. Yeah, excellent idea. What have I done? Oh, perfect. Okay. No, I can't. Okay, great. We'll do, yeah, no, we'll do that this week or next week. We're already Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That'd be excellent. Yeah, it'd be nice to kind of make have one in a different location. This is a great place, but it just to kind of, you know, just to get you.
That day you probably come to
That's not a bad thing. Yeah.
It's getting even better.
There might even be a bar for after. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they got a store full of booze.
Okay, shall we begin again? So we start again, Mr. Chair? Okay. And I probably, yeah, for the next meeting, you will be more of a traditional chair. You'll kind of run the meeting. This is okay. I don't want you to think I'm usurping your role here. Just keep it rolling. Okay, keep it rolling. Okay, so one of the things that that is in the terms, and one of the things that we want to do is, as a committee, and then ultimately as a community, is to really understand the local government system that we have in place today. And so we're going to kind of break this into two parts. And there's two papers in the package that talk about this a little bit. We'll just touch on those. This is a bit of a primer. It's a bit of a teaser. There'll be more information on both of these in the report as we go forward, and we'll have further discussions both in our next committee meeting and then in our public process as well on these points. But it is important for us to kind of talk about governance, and it is important to talk about services as they exist today, so that we have that good foundation on which to build. So let's start on that process if we could. And we're going to start with the regional district governance paper. And we'll start with the question, you know, what is a regional district? And again, let me just kind of emphasize that I fully expect that some folks around the table will be very well schooled in this information, and some may have less information on these particular points. So we'll just kind of go at a pace that captures us all, and so at the end of the process, we will all be on the same page. So the first thing to recognize is that regional districts really are federations of different jurisdictions. Every regional district, except for one in the province, every regional district has a combination of both municipalities and electoral areas. The one, just fun fact if you're interested, the one that doesn't have municipalities is Central Coast Regional District on the in the Bella Pool area. Yes. Anyway, but that's all an aside. So, like I said, we're kind of geeky on this stuff. Yes. So federations of jurisdictions, and the federation point is really important because it's not a point of, when we look at other provinces, we have regional governments, we have regional municipalities in Ontario, we have counties in some provinces, and those governments tend to be kind of, they're often called like first tier government, and then the second tier government would be municipalities, for example. And in those other provinces, that first tier government has very strong statutory responsibilities and powers. And they kind of have people directly elected, all people directly elected to that body, as opposed just to electoral area directors, all people directly elected to that body, and they serve as a very separate order of local government. In our system, it's different. In our system, we've got local jurisdictions, some of which are municipalities, some of which are electoral areas, and they come together in a local government body called a regional district. And that is a federation that really depends on the voluntary surrender of certain authority to that body to provide services and to do things as a collective that individual jurisdictions may not be able to do. Yes, Brian.
I have a quick question. Last night at a board meeting, we were discussing the size of this community, and it's acknowledged us with 3,000 people.
Yes.
We're bigger than Princeton, we're almost the size of Henderson. Is that typical of the size of the full districts?
In terms of population?
Yeah.
It really varies. Some of them, it's not atypical. It's not uncommon. Yes. So you can have, so in some places you'll have 1,000 people in the electoral area. In some places you'll probably even have fewer, like in Central Coast, I guess, probably fewer. But in other places you'll have 10,000, 11,000.
Is that classical maintenance or is that?
Nope.
Which one might be X? Big population there, they're building a $40 million sewer.
Yeah, and so
There's a lot of people there.
fair enough, absolutely. And even if we look at Shuswap area, the South Shuswap electoral area C, which is Blind Bay, Sorrento, that they've got 8,500 people there.
One basic study right now.
Yes, we're actually involved in that. Yes. In fact, I was this morning in front of the board at CSRD delivering the final report. So, yeah. Anyway, that's another fun fact. But but yes, you can have lots of now. When the anomaly was Westside before West Kelowna was incorporated. Westside then, which included where we are now, but Westside then as an entirety was 30,000 people at that point. And that's not including the folks on West Bank First Nations lands. So with those folks, it was 40,000. But 30,000 people in an unincorporated area was unheard of. And that's why there was a push for many years to look at some kind of change, some kind of incorporation of that area. Yeah, it was never, regional districts were, it's a really good question though, because regional districts are, from a local service perspective, they're very well suited to providing, they can be very well suited to providing basic local services to areas that have very low servicing needs. Once you get to groups, once you get to electoral areas that have different needs, that have more urban type needs, perhaps, or semi-urban type needs, or just service needs that are different from other unincorporated areas, then you tend to start to look at other types of local government, so municipalities in particular. So, but you can have, sometimes that tipping point will be 2,000 people. In other cases, it will be 8,000 people. It really depends on the circumstances. Yeah, but there are many municipalities that are a lot smaller than Northwest Side in terms of population. Yeah, and you pointed out a few. Absolutely. Yeah.
Princeton, Pemberton.
Yeah, Princeton, Pemberton,
Montrose,
Montrose, Fruitville.
people.
Yeah, Wells, 250. Yeah.
Sun Peaks was 347 when they incorporated.
Jumbo was 0. They just unincorporated. Yeah.
Like you said, we're content with servicing needs.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's so neat about the local government system and the approach the province has taken from a policy perspective on making kind of the system fit the needs of the locality. So the needs are going to differ place to place, and the province has said, hey, we are here to listen to the communities, and if you think you need a different system, we'll help you study that, and then we'll see where it goes. So anyway, federations and jurisdictions, and first and foremost, they exist to provide services. And when we think about service provision, every level of government exists really to provide services to citizens. To the residents who live within whatever jurisdiction it is. And that is doubly so with local government, where the main role is to provide services. The services that really define where we live, the services that shape the communities, the services that really kind of give us what we need to have a high quality of life. So exist to provide services. Sherry's going to talk at some length about the services and about the different kinds of services. So I won't steal her thunder and get in front of that. And you're probably thinking, thank God, because we're tired of listening to you, Alan. So when we look at decisions, though, who makes decisions? So we've got our board of directors. So one of the roles as a service provider, then one of the areas or one of the types of services that regional districts provide are local services to unincorporated areas. Those are services that aren't typically provided to incorporated areas by the regional district, but they're provided simply to electoral areas. So that electoral area planning, those kinds of things, the basic services. As the service provider to electoral areas and to communities like those in the Northwest Side, the regional district is the local government. In a municipality, the municipality, or in an incorporated area, the municipality is the local government, and the council is the governing body. In our system here right now, our local government is the regional district and our governing body is the regional board of directors. The board of directors has two types of directors on there. They have electoral area directors like Director Carson, and those are folks who are directly elected by their constituents to sit on that board. And they have municipal directors. And those folks are different in the sense that they, well, probably in many ways, you're saying yourself, but we won't go down that road. But they're different in that they are appointed by their councils to represent their municipalities on the regional district board. So we have some folks who are directly elected to the board, and we have some who are appointed by their councils. Once they're at the table, they all have the same authorities. They all have votes on different matters that affect the jurisdictions that they represent. They all are part of a corporate body. They all have a fiduciary duty to that body. So they all are part of that corporation and that governing body, but they got there in different ways. Yes?
To clarify, the number on Director Carson's website of 2,807 residents is for all of electoral.
Full electoral area.
That's Traders Cove, that's Japan, maybe that's their, not just.
Good point.
The breakdown that I got through planning was 2,105 people in the northwest side because their maps, there was several different maps that comprised the entire electoral area. And one map was West Side Road to the lake for the Northwest Side Fire Protection District, and the other one was West Side Road to the back of to the top of the hill. And there's nobody outside of the subdivisions behind us. So I figured that the 2,100 is a pretty fair number, and we were 1,349 in 2016.
That's quite a jump.
45.5%.
2017, so you said just over.
2016, we were 1,349. If you break the maps down, and now we're at 2,105.
Yep.
2017, so
And there's very little open land outside of the northwest side. If you're taking the stuff that is already sort of under development, it's pretty much all waterfront south of us.
Yep.
All waterfront through Brent Road, all inland in Trepanier and Bear Creek, Maine. So
okay, well, that gives us a good. So thank you though, Callie, for that clarification. You're absolutely right. And it's good to know that we've still got a fairly robust size population here.
one other thing that the census did show us is in 2016, we were 52.5% full-time occupancy, and that has now moved up to 67.5%.
Okay, very
so
important. That's
it's not only are we growing, the people are actually moving and living.
And this is, I'm really glad you're making these points because one of the things we'll talk about coming forward, and it's our very last slide today where we look ahead to the next meeting and we talk a little bit about the interim report. One section of that report is going to be a profile of the community. So all of the information is very relevant to that profile. We'll feature that. And that statistic is particularly relevant in a study like this because it does indicate that this is becoming more of a full-time community. And the needs of a full-time community tend to be a little bit different than the needs of a seasonal community.
And we still have, according to planning, almost 1,000 or more empty buildable lots within the northwest side area here. So we still have room for growth as well. And with the way the Okanagan is going and the rest of this stuff, I'm expecting that growth to fill in pretty fast.
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about, since we're talking about governance, and governance really is all about decision making, how decisions are made and who makes those decisions. And how decisions are made and who makes decisions is very different in a regional district than it is in a municipality. In a municipality, it's quite straightforward and quite simple. Your municipal council makes the decisions. The council can be either 5, 7, 9, or in the case of Vancouver, 11 members of council, including the mayor. Every member of council, including the mayor, gets a vote on all matters. One vote on all matters. So very straightforward in a municipality, very different in a regional district. In a regional district, we first of all have to think, well, when we think of services, we've got different types of services. Sherry will get into. We've got our local government services to electoral areas. We've got our sub-regional services to different combinations of jurisdictions. Some can be municipalities, some can be electoral areas. And then we've got our full regional services to all jurisdictions throughout the region. That's important because on different matters, different directors get to vote and different directors don't get to vote, depending on whether their jurisdictions participate, that is, receive the services. So let's talk about these special voting rules, because they're actually quite fascinating in a sense. Again, the kind of geeky side coming out, but they are quite fascinating, and they do kind of, they are important to understand. So we've got special voting rules. We've got, first of all, unweighted, corporate unweighted votes, corporate weighted votes, and stakeholder weighted votes. What we mean by these is that there are on the regional district of Central Okanagan board right now, there are 13 directors. Thank you. 13 directors. Lucky 13. Okay.
Sorry, if I could clarify, there's 13 voting directors
Yes.
and one ex officio director
Yes.
who does not vote from West.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. Thank you, Corey. So 14 directors, one of whom is non-voting and appointed by West Bank First Nation to participate in discussions around the board table. Very important role in that. But 13 voting members representing the jurisdictions on the screen: Kelowna, West Kelowna, Lake Country, Beachland, the 4 municipalities, and 2 electoral areas: Central Okanagan West, of which we're part, and Central Okanagan East. Every jurisdiction gets a certain number of votes based on its population. There's something called the voting unit, which is 4,000 people in our DCO. You take the voting unit and you divide it into the total population of the jurisdiction, and the outcome of that is the number of votes that jurisdiction gets. In municipalities, no director can have more than 5 votes, and so you then kind of divide that number, in Kelowna's case 37 by 5, and you get 7.5. So you get 8 directors from Kelowna sitting on the board. West Kelowna, you get 10 votes, so you divide that by 5, and you get 2 directors sitting on the board, and so forth.
Just a quick question.
Please.
Who appoints the directors from Kelowna?
Council, municipal council. Yeah, and West Kelowna, City of West Kelowna Municipal Council. Now I should note these are 2021 numbers here, so they are. We put them in there. They're not yet. Because I think, are there 7 or 8 directors from Kelowna right now? There's 8 directors. 7. Okay, so we.
And the district doesn't reconcile voting units until the following January
Gotcha.
of the census.
Okay.
So you will not see a change in short order at least.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it has come before the regional district.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that is one
Request
thing.
for voting units.
Yeah, that's one thing that has come before the board, because as you can tell, we're the only regional district, I believe, in the province where one community has the overwhelming weighted vote plus the vote count at the board table. So they're in a really strong position out there. We did ask to have the 4,000 number bumped. And that because next time they do a census, or even right now, I think Kelowna is eligible for at least 1 more seat.
They are under these.
So they're just, you know, we're not gonna have room at the table for the rest of us pretty soon.
That's right.
So we did suggest that they bump it up. I wanted it up to 5,500. I think we were offered 5,000.
So anyway, yeah. So that's all good information to have, and we'll update these numbers as we kind of get that information in front of us. But the takeaway really is that when we look at the population and we apply whatever voting unit is, we then determine how many votes each jurisdiction gets. And in corporate weighted votes, those are the votes then where that number of votes is very important, because the jurisdictions that have the votes, the larger numbers of votes, they get to use all of those in weighted situations. Those are, and so the question is then, what are the corporate weighted votes? Corporate weighted votes are votes where every director in the corporation votes, and every director votes using the number of votes assigned to him or her under this system here. So West Kelowna, under this system, each director would get 5 votes assigned to him or her, and right now they're both hims, that they would cast in corporate weighted votes. What kinds of issues are decided using corporate weighted votes? They tend to be financial issues. So the passing of the annual financial plan or the budgets, that's something that is a corporate weighted vote. The acquisition of property or the disposal of property, that's a weighted vote as well. And those are decisions then that are done as corporate weighted. And the reason they're done as corporate weighted votes is because they have implications for their liabilities and the potential liabilities that the corporation takes on. So the jurisdictions with the more people tend to have more assessment or tax base, and so they are more on the hook, if you will, for any liability that arises as a result of those decisions. So the system recognizes that by giving them more of a say over those votes. Now,
maybe you could explain to people, because I don't know if everybody knows, why I have the same number of weighted votes as Lake Country.
I just coming to that. Excellent point.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much, Director Carson. So if you look at Central Okanagan West, we see a population of almost 14,000, which we're thinking, well, hold on a minute. We just said there's only 3,000 in the entire area, 2,800 and 2,100 here Northwest Side. So what is that all about? Well, there are, don't forget, 10,500 folks living on West Bank First Nations land. And for the purposes of determining the number of votes in weighted vote situations, folks living on First Nations land are included in the calculation. So Central Okanagan West, it benefits, if we can say that word, it benefits more than I think almost any other jurisdiction of British Columbia under that model, because it gives you an extra 3 votes, really.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I do not represent WFN in any way, shape, or form. They have their own chief and council, and all of that stuff goes through them. You just got the population because that's how the government's decided to allocate their ability. The people on the reserve have a right to vote. And so this is how the government has determined that they will exercise that right to vote.
Something that I'm not clear on is the services that regional district provides. So if I look at Kelowna, I mean, that's a city in itself. They've already got their own services. So what is it that Port does for Kelowna?
That is a very good question. So when we think of the services, and Sherry's going to expand on this a little bit more, but there are 3 different levels of service that are provided. One is the local level, and those are the services to unincorporated areas. So community planning, water systems, those kinds of services. Fire department, the fire protection, parks, sure, community parks, those kinds of things are provided as local services to the electoral areas, not to the municipalities, as you pointed out. That Kelowna has its own park system, its own fire department, and so forth. So Kelowna doesn't participate in those services, neither does, for that matter, any of the other municipalities, and they don't pay for those services. And on many of the decisions that arise under those services, they don't vote on those services. They do vote on the budgets, and they vote on key regulatory issues under those services. But on certain decisions that relate to operations and administration, they won't vote. Zero?
Operations never come before the board.
Well, it's not
for the board.
No, so in the Local Government Act, it's referred to administration and operations, which in essence is any matter that doesn't require a weighted vote, so a budget issue or an unweighted corporate vote falls into that other category. Oh, yes. Okay. We're gonna, yeah.
Well, we can get into this more when we're talking about the services, but the other anomaly of, and I'm sure Alan was going to get there as he gets through this slide, but is that when a service is only provided to one electoral area, the system doesn't allow for one electoral area director to make a vote. So if it's only provided to one electoral area, the entire board votes on that service. So that's why you don't see as many. So So you would see more of those stakeholder weighted votes, the more sub-regional services you have. So if you have a service that's shared with one municipality, and 2 electoral areas, you'd see more of those stakeholder weighted votes come to the table. But if you really have mostly services that are just provided to your electoral area, then the whole board votes on them.
Yes, thank you. No, that's perfect. And we are, you're quite right. We're going to come to that on the next slide, but I'm glad you brought it up now because we needed to address that. Let me just kind of talk a little bit about the corporate unweighted votes, because that's important too. So we've got 13 directors at the board table. In a corporate unweighted vote, every director at the board table votes, and every director gets 1 vote. So irrespective of the size of population. Now, there'll still be some difference in terms of sharing of power. There'll be the kind of a bias in favor of the larger municipalities because they have more than 1 director. But every director there gets a vote, and every director gets 1 vote. And the types of decisions that are made on corporate unweighted votes are, for example, the establishment of a new service. So a new service, that's a corporate unweighted vote. Well, what would another example be for corporate unweighted vote? Oh, I always put her on the spot like this. There are some other examples too. There's some regulatory issues that are corporate unweighted votes and those kinds of things. But wherever you need the corporation as the legal body to chime in, so creating a new service, for example, that's the entire legal body taking responsibility for that service. So everybody gets a say on that, but they only get the 1 vote on that. We then have our stakeholder votes, which as Sherry noted, are more relevant in some places than in others. So if we have a sub-regional service with a number, let's say 3 or 4 jurisdictions that are part of that. And so we do have, for example, wastewater treatment on that involves Peachland, West Kelowna, and I believe it WFN, and is Central Northern West as well. So thank you. Okay, so that would be an example of a stakeholder weighted vote then on anything not involving the expenditure of funds. So as a weighted vote or the establishment of a service. So on kind of every other issue that related to that particular service, then those jurisdictions would have a say and others would not. Now, let me kind of, it's a little tricky. As Sherry noted, no single director can decide an issue. So if we have a system, as we do in Northwest Side, where your only jurisdiction participating in the service is the West Side, Central and West Side, then everybody votes on all matters. And yes, go ahead.
Okay, this is where I had an issue in the past. Okay, this is also a decision that sometimes goes to legal opinion.
Okay,
and that's what happened to me, is because we had 6 water systems within the regional district, within 2 electoral areas, by 2 directors. And they pretty much operate under the same bylaws and rules and regulations and the rest of that. And the entire board gets to vote on that. And I don't think that's right, because the 2 directors are representing those 6 water systems across the electoral area. So that's not 1 director, that's 2 directors. And I argued that, and I was told that I lost in the legal opinion.
Okay. So the legal opinion, so in that case, then whatever the opinion was, and we won't get into the details on that, but whatever the opinion was, would have said that particular issue on which the decision needs to be made is something that falls under either a financial matter or a regulatory matter or some kind of legal liability matter, that the whole board will end up wearing it, and so the whole board has a role in playing.
Yeah, and see, and my problem with that at that time is I don't believe that a legal opinion is a legal opinion when it only comes from one side.
Okay. Well, when you say, okay, fair enough.
We'll move on.
Thank you. Yes, when we say one side, it is the one side is the local government. Don't forget, that is kind of the corporation giving that opinion, and it is, and right now in our system, that corporation is the government for this area. Absolutely, yeah, and it's a federation, right? So this is we share. In a federation, we share decision-making power, we share finances, and costs and so forth, and we share this in other ways as well. But yet sometimes we don't get the outcome we're hoping. Yes.
In that example, would it not just come down to the ability and
responsibility of that regional district to sustain the fiscal responsibility for that asset. And if they can, then how are the other members voting on that responsibility?
You know, I don't know the details on that. I'd have to look at that particular case. I just don't know. Yeah, I do know that if, I mean, we have to accept that if a lawyer has given an opinion, that lawyer is going to be able to stand by that opinion. So anyway, we're not going to go down this hole. Now, one takeaway, which is very important, if we can just kind of cut to the chase here, the one takeaway which is important when we look at this Byzantine but beautifully elegant kind of style of voting, and from a purely kind of governance structure perspective, it is really quite elegant, notwithstanding the fact that we don't always get the outcome we want. But that aside, when we look at that system, the big takeaway is that every decision for Northwest Side involves others. So if you have, and that's important because that's a big distinction from that is unique to the regional district system and the unincorporated area system, different from municipalities. Where in municipalities, decisions made will be made by that council. Many decisions, all decisions on services provided and all matters provided by the municipality will involve only the municipality. In a regional district, as a federation, we share not only costs and finances, but we share decision-making authority. And so in our case here, because we have a number of services that are only provided to the West Side, and because other services are provided not only to the West Side, but to a range of other jurisdictions as well, every service in which Northwest Side is involved, every decision on that service involves somebody, directors, elected officials from other jurisdictions. Now, a lot of people hear that and think, well, that's wrong. That's unaccountable. That's undemocratic. And that's a perspective that a lot of people share. Other people say that's absolutely fine. That's how the system is set up. It is a federation. We share decision-making authority. We share costs. And both systems are entirely legitimate. Different folks have different views on which is better, and what is better for any particular time is going to change depending on the needs and the interests of the jurisdiction of the communities.
I think that's sort of what's happened in ours is as a federation going apart because size, you know,
sure.
You've got Kelowna there with 150,000 people, and
yeah.
we're here with, you know, 2,000.
Yeah.
And you look at things different, and we've grown apart.
Yeah, you've got if I can kind of just provide a little bit of color commentary, you've got a very unique dynamic in the Okanagan, in the central Okanagan, with Kelowna being such a dominant player there. It is, and we also, because we are the de facto third metropolitan area in British Columbia. So if we look at Metro Vancouver, if we look at the capital region, those are areas where the regional districts play a very regional government type of role. And we've kind of fallen into that as well, or we've kind of evolved into that with the central Okanagan too, because we've got only 2 electoral areas, and we have one very large municipality with many people on the regional board. And so we tend to provide a lot of regional services, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's all these things. What's really interesting about all this stuff is that this model, this regional district model, which has value both as a local government for electoral areas, which has value as a sub-regional service provider for combinations of jurisdictions, and which has value as a regional decision-making body and service provider. All of those things are great, and you can, but the regional district at any one particular time will have its focus on one or another of those purposes, and it's kind of, and that purpose shifts in response to the needs of the communities that it serves. And when we look at the individual community level, as we're doing with Northwest Side, as needs change, as interests change, the system is capable also of changing. And that's really the gist of what it is we're going to be here to discover. Okay, let me pass it over. You'll be happy to know, to Sherry.
Thank you, Alan. And as Alan already pointed out, he's already touched on many of these things that I'm going to reference. But yeah, so Alan's explained how decision-making and how governance works in the regional district model. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how servicing, which is sort of the other key focus of what this study is going to be. So the primary focus is on services provided by the regional district, but we will touch on services provided by other providers as well. And again, as Alan has already mentioned, we do like to think of those services as being provided in the 3 different buckets. So on the one hand, we have services that are provided throughout the whole region. So those are regional services. Everybody pays into those services. It's things like 911 service or air quality or regional parks. I'm trying to think of some others, but a lot of those sort of broader services, everybody pays into the regional growth strategy. Those are services that Kelowna is paying into and everybody receives. Then we have the bucket that's those sub-regional services, so services that are provided to just a portion of the region. So often it's the 2 electoral areas. So electoral area planning, it's building inspection services, but sometimes it's a combination of 1 electoral area and 1 municipality that they might share a service with. So it allows for those sub-regional services. And then the other bucket being those local services. So that's where you're getting your fire service, your Westside Park community parks, you're getting your water systems. So those are services that either are provided to 1 electoral area or even sometimes just a subset of that electoral area. So those are the 3, sorry, I'm not keeping up with the PowerPoint. Local, sub-regional, and regional. So we like to characterize those services as those 3 buckets. And really, what services and the menu of services that you're getting from your regional district really depends on where you are. So if you're in a municipality, you'll have a menu of services that you receive from the regional district. If you're in a certain part of the Central Okanagan West, you might get your water system as well as the community parks and some of those regional services. Whereas if you're in another part, you might not even get fire service. So it really, there's a different menu of services and it will depend on where you are within the regional district as to what you get. What you pay for, one of the unique things about regional districts is that you can tell exactly which services you get by looking at your tax bill. Because one of the unique things about regional districts is that they have to have accounting and fund accounting where each service is accounted for separately. Part of the reason for that is because you have different participants in every service. So some of them, again, are regionally funded. Some of them might be a smaller local service area that's just this group of taxpayers in this area. So they account for each service separately. And when you look at your tax bill, it will list all those services and it will tell you exactly how much you're paying in taxes for each of those services. Which if you've lived in a municipality is quite different because in a municipality, you're usually paying the 1 tax rate and that's a general revenue and it pays for your full menu of local services from your municipality. So that's one of the ways that you can actually see what you're paying for each particular service, which is quite unique to regional districts and can be a good thing. It can be quite constraining for the regional district as well because you can't actually borrow between accounts. You can't raise some extra funds and you have some extra funds in your fire department, so you hand it over to your water system. It doesn't work that way. But you pay for, yeah, people get to see exactly what they're paying for.
Never extra funds in the fire.
Yeah, so there's no general revenues and yeah, paid for by user fees, property taxes, and generally so there's some grants from other governments, but those are the key ways that most of the services are paid for. Property tax being the big one, but also user fees. Water is usually recovered, or if you have sewer services, which I know you guys don't, you're often paying for those through user fees rather than property tax. And the taxes, actually, speaking of services provided by others, the taxes in a regional district are actually collected by the province. So municipalities collect their own taxes in the regional district. The province collects them on your behalf, and you pay a little extra for that. You don't have that choice. So as I mentioned, so the regional district, and yeah, the range of services, again, aside from being regional, sub-regional, and local, but the services really can run the gamut. There's a few different services that are mandated services by the province and through the Local Government Act. But other than that, really the range of services is intended to respond to whatever the needs are in the community. So whether it's water, or if an area is interested in creating a watershed service or wants to see more economic development, like really the type of services that can be established, there's almost no, well, there's a few limits, but there's the regional district has the ability to respond to whatever the community's needs are and to establish those services as long as there's interest in the community in paying for whatever service they've proposed. The other local services providers, or the other providers in your area. So sorry, speaking ahead. So the other main service provider is the province. So the province provides all the local roads within your electoral area. So both the provincial highways, but all the local roads are provided for, and all the maintenance of those roads is provided by the province through the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. The province also has subdivision approval authority in electoral areas. So they're the ones that review and approve subdivisions.
I think we got a subdivision.
You can still have a subdivision bylaw. You have a role in reviewing how it fits with your OCP, but then you pass it on. They have the subdivision approval.
Okay.
Yes. So it's just that sort of, you still probably review them because that's actually something that the province would still ask you to do anyway. So usually you still collect a fee for that, but they are the actual approval authority, mostly because they approve the roads. So the subdivision usually creates the new roads, and so they want to be able to have both of those pieces. The province, as I said, they collect your taxes as well. So those are some of the key services that the province looks after. And you have other local service providers. Sometimes you have, well, you guys have a private water utility that provides water. I think that's Fintry Utilities in your area. There's one also, another one in central Okanagan West, but outside of the northwest side. 3
private systems and 3 public systems in the northwest side.
In the
northwest.
Okay. There you go. You're way ahead of me. So private utilities are one other provider. And I know further down in the outside your area, there's also an improvement district that's down. Yeah, the improvement district is the waterworks. Yeah, Traders Cove, that's what it is. Traders Cove is an improvement district, which is actually another local government created through the Local Government Act, or referenced in the Local Government Act. So they do have some local government authorities, but they yeah, they don't have the ability to collect grants. And anyway, but you don't have any in Northwest Side, so I won't go too much detail of that. But yes, those are other providers. So there can be private utilities that provide services. You also get services, of course, from the school district, interior health, other services outside our sort of normal municipal local governments.
Yeah, we actually roll over 2 school districts with students in 22 and 23.
Well, right on the border. Oh, to have 2 different school districts?
Yes, to either have the 2 interior health, for example, 2 different health districts, or school districts where you're dividing amongst 2 school districts.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's common, but I mean, everywhere there's a boundary, they don't always follow the same electoral area boundaries. Yeah.
We also are 23 for our students is our catchment area, but 22 has a history of letting our students in there over a number of years, and that varies in the last few years. Some years they were accepting students, and other years they were not. They were sending them south.
So is that a decision made at the school board level, and that's just a matter of
Leave it
discussion between the boards? It has nothing to do with electoral boundaries?
Yeah, that would have nothing to do with electoral boundaries. So yeah, there's no, yeah, you wouldn't have any influence. I mean, I'm sure
Well,
chat about it, but yeah, they don't have any.
Because of our electoral area boundary is the reason we're in catchment. Okay. It's been, I guess, you know, the gracious of 22 for a number of
Right,
years
for
that they've allowed the
accepting, yeah.
students in there.
Yeah.
But we have the Vernon phone numbers and the Vernon addresses, so I'm pretty sure that some of that happened too.
Yes, well, that's an interesting complication. So I wouldn't say it's common, but it's sort of irrespective of where your local government structure.
I was just curious, that it's a provincial function.
Right.
Related then to. boundaries.
And even sorry, health authorities, they don't necessarily follow regional district or, yeah.
And the other provincial services like roads, RCMP, ambulance, they all determine their own boundaries.
Yeah, they all-
Forestry, they have their own boundaries, and I knew that from the fire department is everybody had a different boundary. So we were split up because that was their decision that they made as a service delivery organization.
So then, maybe it's a technical question, but for example, you're out there, in our schools, a lot of kids used to go to 22 and probably be in 23. And if the community here wanted their kids to go to 22,
yeah.
Who's the correspondence? Do you have your board then sends a letter to school district 22 and 23 and asking, hey guys, we have a community that wants to send our kids over there, check out the logistics. How does that actually happen from a functional perspective that you ask that jurisdiction to change its special boundary?
I think you would be addressing your school district board.
Yes.
One school district board will speak to the other school district board, and you can say, hey, well, we're not happy with that, but they'd be talking to the province, so the Ministry of Education and discussing that. But you elect trustees to your school district board, they're your elected representatives for education.
I've spoken with both boards, and the chair of 23 is our representative. So we've talked to both.
Thank you. You're welcome.
No,
yeah. And I mean, it's the same for, as you mentioned, like Ministry of Transportation. They've divided the province into 8 different jurisdictions, and you might be in that one, but it doesn't necessarily follow any kind of electoral area or regional district boundaries. It's just kind of what almost administratively makes sense for them.
That's another
Yes, right.
complete other conversation.
Yeah.
Add that.
Those unique services, may be allocated or formalized under a different government structure. Or the community association can dictate, all right, this is who our health board is, this is who our school system is. They're at the discretion of the schools and health.
Yeah. The province will be, yeah.
Yeah, you don't decide where your ambulances come from, you don't decide where your police come from.
Yes, yeah, and those are actually 2 comments that would say, so speaking of the province, one of the key services they provide is policing to unincorporated areas. So yes, they're the ones figuring out your authorized strength for where your RCMP is based out of and providing that service. And you're paying for that service through your provincial rural tax, yeah, or police tax.
So in that case, for example, if our police services are coming from
Armstrong entities.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the city of Vernon, just specifically, okay, so we have the RCMP there, I'll come and make a presentation to council quarterly basis, here's what's happening with crime and whatnot. But the same then what happens if we have more comes down here and it's presentation to the board of what's happening.
Our superintendent for the RCMP that services this area report to the North Okanagan Regional District Board because that's where most of their jurisdiction is. Okay, it's we're the only spot outside the north, I think, that they actually service in that way.
So it's a growth thing,
Was that?
But we don't get a report on it.
I do go to an annual meeting that the RCMP have actually just started reinstating again because of COVID. They stopped it, but I used to go to a meeting once a year and meet with the different RCMP officers and some of the other electoral area directors up in North. And I know some of those guys. So when we've had issues, I've been able to sort of talk to them and ask them if they could help us out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. no problem. Yeah, so I guess just the one last note is that, so obviously a pretty quick overview, but the interim report that we will be bringing forward at the next meeting will go into quite a bit of detail on these services, and not only detailing what service is provided, how decisions are made on that specific service, what that service costs, both in terms of what the budget is for that service, as well as what's the tax that comes to a representative house, and yeah, providing all that detail, including probably the interesting school district issue in the interim report. So.
Okay, shall we move on?
Keep going.
All right. You're like, please get it done. All right, community engagement. So first point to make under here is just to emphasize what an important part of the committee's role the engagement is. And let me pause for one moment. We've got our last member of the committee at the table now, I think. So, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, I am Eric Dempsey, local resident, reason I'm late, so I'm also on the advisory planning commission. And so we have a number of issues to deal with today, and that's why we did.
Excellent. Thank you. And Director Carson had mentioned that you were with the agency, so we knew you'd be coming in a bit later. Yes. Thank you very much. Oh, and Mr. Graham here is your new chair of the committee, and Mr. Galloway is the vice chair. So they now go by Mr. Yeah.
You missed out on that part, luckily.
Yes.
Yeah.
We almost made you chair.
Yeah, in your absence.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Chair, we'll move on if we could then. So important part of the committee's role is the engagement part, because this is really, again, where we learn what the concerns are and what the issues are. And we need to know those so that we can then determine whether changes need to be put forward as recommendations. There are two types of community engagement that we are proposing for the committee. And one is kind of ongoing engagement. So that starts really, actually, in fact, it started before tonight because the website was already up and going. So when we go to rdco.com, you'll see there under your government, there'll be a separate section for Northwest Side Study. And this is, and I actually met with Corey and with the communications person, Jody as well, and we went through how this is going to be set up within our DCO. So there'll be a separate section of the website that just for the study. That's up there right now. That's just a screenshot from it, but we could show it live if we had the technology, but we're not going to. We're not going to touch that computer. So anyway, on the study website, then what we will be doing, we'll be having all the materials that we share with the committee will be going onto the website because we want full transparency. We want people to be able to follow that and download whatever they need. We'll also be inviting people to submit any questions they have. And then the consultants will respond to those questions and put Q&A right up there.
So will you be moving the existing links that are on the website now for like the 2017 and different ministry letters and the rest of that?
We'll still have them. Yeah,
we'll
consolidate all of that under there. And I see Corey standing up. Did you want to say something?
I just would like, if I may, Mr. Chair, and Alan add, so there's actually two different mechanisms that will serve as the one-stop shop for all information related to this study. So one is the web page that Alan mentions that will have a lot more of that background previous history. Yes, but also on yoursay.rdco.com has 5 different community engagement, I'll say initiatives for a lack of a better word. This study is one of them. So that's a platform where residents can see the timeline it's going to take to accomplish, what are the key criteria or milestones in accomplishment. And Alan may provide a survey to be going out to the residents, for example, through that platform. So yoursay.rdco.com. You'll see right away Northwest Side Study is the first one that pops up.
And that's the new shiny piece on our
the one that the director
spanking new website.
Yeah, that you went through just a couple.
Yeah, just a couple of days ago. So they're just getting it up and running.
And Corey, will that be the one with the FAQ? Then the questions and answers. Okay, so the FAQ will be then on your say. So we'll make sure that's clear to folks, and we'll have a link from one to the other if we need to. And Corey and staff and Jody, they're seasoned pros at this thing, so they'll make sure that it's all very intuitive and easy to follow.
And anybody that hasn't been to the regional district website recently,
Yes,
give it another whack.
it's excellent.
Yeah,
They've done a great job.
there's been a lot of
Great job.
improvements to it,
Yes.
so it's a lot easier to navigate through.
Absolutely. So anyway, so we've got our website up there. So everything then that goes before this committee will go online. So everybody in the community will see exactly what the community sees. We'll also have, I'm looking over to Corey to make sure I don't misspeak here. We'll also have, we have recordings of that we're taking here for, they'll be available online as well for people who can't, okay.
Yeah, so I do apologize for the committee for the length of the first email, but in the first email with the agenda links and attachments, the yoursay.rdco.com is there. And all of that additional information is all included in that first email.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. So we've got our website then, and that's the official site for the committee and the study. And that's really important to emphasize because we want to maintain some control over the information in this. We don't want to be referring to other sites. We don't want to be sending people to different Facebook groups or what have you. People can go to those if they wish, but if they want the facts, if they want kind of the single resource, the official resource, they come to our site. And the same goes with social media, because another ongoing engagement effort is going to be social media. Social media, of course, is something, I actually don't have social media. I got rid of it and my life is much simpler. So, but that said, I know 99.9% of the rest of the world does have it and they do use it, and that's great. And so we will be relying on RDCO to do all the postings on the different social media platforms. Again, those postings being the official postings from the committee and for the study. People can take those and forward them if they want, retweet them, whatever the terminology is, and do all that. And that's great, but we're not going to be kind of engaging in any debates online with folks and stuff. That's because that is a deep, dark hole that once you go down, you can never escape. So that's important to kind of get out at the outset here, because in previous meetings, and David online will attest to this, in previous meetings, we've had to kind of pause and really pull back the committee to say, we know that there's comments being generated on this Facebook group or that Facebook group or this Instagram. That's great. We can't control that stuff. All we can do is provide the information from the one source that we control.
Suffered through that during the fire.
There we go. Yes. And committee meetings, all the committee meetings are open to the public, of course. All the committee meetings are online, and all the committee meetings will be recorded so people can view those as well. That was the ongoing stuff. We've also then got our 2-month kind of programs, which would be in, what did we say, May and June. So that 2-month program is going to feature a number of different things. The kind of the flagship, if you will, is going to be the 3 open houses. Each open house will be an opportunity for people, first of all, to arrive and peruse various poster boards of information, have handouts they can take with them. All the handouts will be available, and the poster boards will be available online as well. They'll be available. We'll have some copies at the library next door, and maybe at the fire hall, whatever. So we'll make as much information possible in as many different formats to folks. But the open houses will be the ones where we'll be encouraging the community to come out. Each open house will kind of will present the same information. So, and we'll be very clear in advertising it as such, so that people don't feel that they have to go to all 3, although they may if they wish. But they can go to one and get the same information they'll get at the others. The open houses, as I noted, will first start with an opportunity for people to review poster boards, take information pamphlets, have one-on-one discussions with the consultants, with the committee members, with staff from RDCO, with whomever, with each other, exchange ideas, exchange information, exchange thoughts, then be seated after about an hour of that and have a presentation by the committee delivered by the consultants on behalf of the committee, but with the committee there to help respond to questions, to help provide comments in whatever capacity you wish to operate in that venue. We are kind of at your disposal to help you with that information and to play whatever role the committee wishes us to play. Typically, we will provide the presentation, but we'll also then have usually the chair moderate a question and answer period afterwards. So that's where you earn your bacon.
We also have community notice boards.
Perfect.
In all the different communities out here. They're not used as much as they used to when the mailboxes were centralized.
Yes.
But we still get a lot of walkers, and I think we still get a fair bit of use.
We will certainly take advantage of those then. So those are the open houses. We will also be coming out with a fairly detailed but very easy to read and very user-friendly overview document. We tend to do this one. We will have it available online. We will have it advertised in the social media, but we tend to do this one old school, and because we want kind of a physical copy in the hands of all households. So we do a mail out to all different households, every household in the Northwest Side study area. And that will give a full overview of the study, of a synopsis of the findings, a kind of a talk about the different opportunities in the open houses, all those kinds of things, and we'll get that in the hands of every household.
Just have a quick question
Absolutely.
about the open houses. Now, I see that they're going to be, attendees will be encouraged to complete a brief written questionnaire
Yes.
At those open houses. Is that written questionnaire going to be made available to people who don't attend the open house? Will it be available online? Will they be able to fill it out? Or are we, for written questionnaires responses, are we really making a selected group of people who are going to come out to the open house?
We're going to want to canvass the views of those who can't come to the open house as well, either because they're not around or because they're uncomfortable still with COVID and so forth.
So how do we do that?
So we'll make that available. We'll advertise it through social media. We'll make that available online. If people need to send us an email, we can send them a written copy.
Or
in
even
the
just a
mail.
link, maybe?
We can do a link, that kind of thing. For
Right on
sure.
our-
Absolutely. Oh, it'll be on. There we go.
So it's actually a public engagement platform that's completely designed for public consultation. So FAQ, surveys, Alan will be working, and his team will be working with the communications team to leverage every resource that we can to get.
So the same
multiple-
questionnaire that we're going to be asking the people who attend in person is going to be the same questionnaire that people can fill out online. So we assume that we're getting
Yes.
appropriate quantitative data.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to caution, however, is that in these kinds of studies, these surveys, these questionnaires, they're not scientifically accurate. They are nevertheless, though, a good source of information and feedback. Sometimes we interpret them with the committee. What are the trends we're seeing? What are the takeaways we're seeing? Are there any anomalies that kind of stand out? But it's not a stratified, structured survey that we would hire, Infraonics to do for us.
It's going to be quantitative and qualitative.
Absolutely. We've got stakeholder group meetings as well. One of the things that we like to do is to, again, in the spirit of being available as a committee and as the consultants of the committee, being available to as many people in the community as we can, and to ensuring that we kind of connect with people where they are using the approaches that work for them. We do also make ourselves available for stakeholder group meetings. The consultants are available to help with, to provide those presentations, and any members of the committee are invited to kind of participate in those as well. So it could be a community association, it could be a ratepayers group, whatever we have, whatever associations we have in the Northwest Side would be invited to, would have an opportunity to invite the committee and the consultants to give a separate presentation. Okay, that's kind of the gist of the public engagement. We'll have more on that at our next meeting as well. Prior to next meeting, we will have a number of documents that we've already talked about coming out, a number of information pieces coming out to the committee. We talked about having RDCO distribute among members and to our friends of the province, the contact list for committee members and for the consultants. We talked also about having RDCO send out, based on input from the consultants, some proposed dates for committee meetings and public hearings. So we'll send that out in advance. And those are the kind of the key things that I took from my notes of our discussion this evening that we'll make sure we get into the hands of the committee fairly quickly so we can start to populate our calendars. But just in anticipation of the next meeting, maybe I can just make a couple of points. First of all, we'll have that in May. It will have the draft interim report, and this is going to be the key focus of that meeting. The interim report is going to, and I noted this earlier, is going to have a community profile of the Northwest Side. So we have, and we're very lucky actually to kind of be doing this study just after the release of the most recent census figures, because that helps us paint a very accurate and up-to-date picture of the Northwest Side. We'll look at a number of different things, a number of different indicators to give the reader and to give us a good sense of statistically and in other ways what is this community all about? Kind of like, how is it? What's the population? What's the demographics? What's the seasonality of folks? What's the kind of the household? what are the employment levels, income levels, all those kinds of things in a statistical fashion. We'll put out, we're using whatever stats we can get, both from Stats Canada, from the regional district and any other sources we can. We will include in that draft interim report a fuller overview of the regional district structure that we touched on this evening, where we talk about the governance and the services role of regional districts. We'll get into then in detail, as Sherry mentioned, the services and the decision-making for those services. We'll go through each service that's provided in the electoral area. There's going to be many, probably over 40. I don't know the exact number right now, but several services. Your job will be to know every specific service. No, just joking. Yeah, but no, we will have no, but honestly, the committee will very quickly get up to speed where I think it's already up to speed. We get up to speed on the specific key services, understand kind of what exactly is included in the service mandate for that particular service, how decisions are made for that service, how costs are handled for that service, what it costs, how costs are recovered, what are the taxation implications from that service. So we'll get a very detailed and clear sense of each of the services that we provide here in the West Side.
Graphics and land values to incorporate.
Yeah, we'll put in whatever, all those kinds of things, and looking at trends and those kinds of things as
A little
well.
bit of water.
Yeah, there is a bit of waterfront. Yeah, I saw some of that.
It's the inland growth that makes us a community though.
Right. Yes. So, Mr. Chair, that kind of covers our presentation for this evening, and I'd like to thank the committee not only for putting up with my voice for most of the day, but also just for kind of sitting through all this stuff, because the unfortunate bit is at the inaugural meeting of a committee that is brought together to do this kind of important study, there's in the first meeting, there's a lot of stuff to cover to kind of get the basis laid out and to kind of make sure that we're all starting from a fairly sound starting point, and now we can get on to the more exciting stuff at our next meeting. So thank you to the committee for your indulgence and your patience. We're more than happy, obviously, to answer any questions, but I'll pass it over to the chair.
Thanks, Alan. Really appreciate your help, your presentation, and your information tonight. And if anybody's got any questions, this is the time.
The ministry members that are on tonight, at these meetings, will we always have a ministry representative?
We typically will, yes, unless there are extenuating circumstances, but yes, I anticipate that we will have a ministry representative at every meeting.
But probably not two. We got extra lucky to have the director as well tonight.
And Karen or David, if you can hear me, are you going to be at LGLA in beginning of April?
We won't be, but there will be representatives from our branch there doing presentations.
Okay, because I'm going down there and I thought maybe coffee would be good.
Oh, okay, that would have been nice. Yeah, no, unfortunately, we're not going over.
Yes, any other questions? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, you usurped your role again.
I'd like to thank the chair, the vice chair, everybody on the committee, the consultants, and Corey and Sam. Great. Thank everybody for participating in this. Really appreciate it.
And as I noted earlier, in terms of communications, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and be sure to copy the chair and vice chair so we make sure that everybody gets the same information. But otherwise, we will be sending information out through our DCO, as we noted earlier, and we'll get that those dates populated in our respective calendars.
So contact list would be first priority?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, probably.
For posterity. Yeah.
That's the conclusion of our meeting.
You could probably have a name and all.
Thank you very much, everyone.